Hello and welcome to the second bracket that we're going to be bringing you on the CollingsThodeNetwork. This is mine. We all got to see Nolan's yesterday, where, if I remember correctly, he picked Houston to win. I'm not going to be having Houston win my bracket, most likely, so we'll see how this goes, and I might as well jump right into it with our first matchup, which is Alabama versus TAMU Corpus Christi. Now, sure, Corpus Christi is coming into this other game, but I mean, we don't gotta spend much time thinking about that one. I'm just gonna jump into it like this, and I find this format to be really fun on the Yahoo website. So we're just gonna keep going like this. This is the closest matchup. I think the most likely matchup for an upset, which is funny because for the money line, it has West Virginia, the low seed, as the favorite. So it's hard to pick against them, and I'm actually going to pick the 9 seed West Virginia to win over Maryland. They play in the toughest conference, and they are the 8th ranked team in that conference versus Maryland, who plays in, as tough as a conference. They only have the same level of competition, and they're only 5th ranked in their conference. So we're picking West Virginia. This one is San Diego versus Charleston, which I'm pretty sure that Kawhi went to San Diego. This is a close one, actually. If we look at the money line especially, it's close. As we keep going and picking these, we'll notice some really funny odds and money lines. But for this one, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to go with the 5-seeded San Diego State University. For this one, Virginia versus Furman. I don't see Virginia blowing this one like they did as the 1 seed. I'm pretty sure that was Virginia. But I think it's going to work really well for them, especially for March Madness. The breakdown for this says that their slow pace and their defensive-heavy style is very fortunate, and it lends itself well to the tournament, and I can't agree more. I'm going to be picking Virginia on this one, but again, the money line is close for this one, surprisingly. So this one we have Creighton versus NC State, and again, another upset candidate, but I don't see it happening. I've seen Creighton going really far in a lot of people's brackets, and while I personally don't agree with that as much, as we'll find out going forward on this one, I do think that they're going to be NC State. Baylor versus UCSB. I, again, don't really see an upset here, and this is where we start to see the money line get ridiculous with a -600 and a +425. Sorry, UC Santa Barbara, but it's just not going to happen this year. Missouri versus Utah State. And the funny thing for me on these bracket this year is I find that a lot of the 10 seeds are really good looking this year. We see it on the money line with Utah State being the favorite. And I'm pretty sure that's going to be a running theme for the rest of these 7-10 matchups. And I surprisingly really like most of the 10 seeds. So we're picking Utah State over Missouri. Now, moving on to the other side of the bracket, I'm pretty sure we are moving to the last matchup is Arizona-Princeton. I'm not going to think twice about it. We're going to keep that one simple. It's going to be Arizona. I honestly see Arizona making a bit of a run this year. Bama's too strong. I don't really care about the off-court things. Once we get to March Madness, that doesn't matter. Going Bama again. This is one of my favorite matchups that I'm looking forward to. It's not the most hype teams in the world, but it is a really, really solid 4 versus 5 matchup. It pains me not to pick San Diego State, but I'm going Virginia. Again, I see them having a little run as this 4 seed. Baylor versus Creighton. This is personally where I see Creighton falling off. I've seen Creighton making it to the Final Four on a few people's brackets, and I just don't see it. Baylor coming into this a little cold. I don't know. I like them a lot, and I find it hard to pick Creighton to go over them. Utah State versus Arizona. Again, I like the 10 seeds this year. I think they're all very talented, but Arizona is such a good team, and it's been such a good program for a while. It's hard to pick against them. Bama versus Virginia is actually really good. While the user picks are mostly Bama in this matchup, I really like the way that they match up. It's just Bama has a few more seniors and sophomores that I like over Virginia, and it's just they're so solid that it's hard to pick against them. Then Baylor, Arizona. This is actually where I have Arizona's run ending. Baylor, I said earlier, they're coming to this a little cold, but it's hard to pick against them, especially when they have these freshmen, especially Keontae George. He's one of my favorite freshmen heading into the NBA, and I think his game's going to translate tremendously. He's a guy that should be a top 5 pick, but I think if any team gets him outside of a top 5 pick, that will be a steal, and I just love the energy that he brings to this Baylor team, and I love the energy that he's going to bring to March Madness, so I'm going Baylor. Then we have Baylor versus Alabama. This is going to be really the Brandon Miller versus Keontae George matchup for me, as both these guys look like they're going to be absolute studs in the NBA. And I'm actually going to pick Baylor to upset Alabama. I don't have Bama making the Final Four. So we move on to the other side of our bracket now, in the Midwest now. And this is where we have a very, very, very talented Houston team that is going to beat a lot of fan favorites, I think, and not saying that Kentucky here, Northern Kentucky, I think, is a fan favorite. But as we go on, we have teams like Auburn and the Iowa Hawkeyes, where these are some teams that people love, especially this Iowa team with its very fast-paced offense, and like you could tell with their 80 points per game, like they're coming out here guns blazing, and I can't take the upset here. I'm going Iowa. Then we got Miami versus Drake. Again, I'm not going to think too hard about these matchups. I didn't really like any of the 12 seeds looking at the bracket. It was just like they were just kind of there. Like it says down here, a late season bubble team. It's just, that's how I feel about every single one of these 12 seeds. So I'm going Miami. Got Kent State versus Indiana. It's hard not to go with the Hoosiers just because of the name value and all that. But Kent State really does look good for a mid-major, especially having a plus 155 money line going into this matchup is like, it's going to turn some heads. And personally, I don't believe in Indiana, especially with the injuries that they've been facing. So I'm picking Kent State, a 13 seed, to go on to the next round. Now we have Pittsburgh versus Iowa State. Pittsburgh, I think, will just beat, I can't remember who they just beat to make it in, but I don't see them going on. This is a very slow-paced Iowa State team. This is a very slow-paced Iowa State team. And I think that they're just going to control this game too much against Pittsburgh and move on to the next round. Xavier versus Kennesaw. I'll be honest, I've never heard of this one in my life, and the money line reflects that. We're picking Xavier. And then we have Texas A&M versus Penn State. Another one of these 7 versus 10s where I kind of like the 10 more than the 7 seed, especially because Penn State's been really hot. And I know I like to not judge a team for being cold, but with how hot Penn State's been and how they are being led by seniors, I'm going to pick them over Texas A&M, my second 10 seed, to advance on. As shocking as it is, I genuinely think that we'll see 2 10 seeds move on past the first round in just this top half of the bracket. Of course, this Texas team looks really good. I've picked them to win in a couple brackets. I'm not sure if we will in this one, but they just look so good. They have a lot of players that have been coming back and just work so well in the system. So, picking Texas. Now we get on to the fun matchups. This is the first one where I think Houston's going to be beating a fan favorite. Houston's moving on. If we watched Nolan's video yesterday, you'd know that he was really repping Houston. So, it's going to be hard to beat them. Miami versus Kent State. Now, I love this run by Kent State. They won a game, but it's so hard to pick an upset past this point after we get past the first round of 64 and into this round of 32. I struggle to see Kent State being that team that brings an upset. So I'm picking Miami. Now, this is closer, Iowa State versus Xavier, but I'm still going to go Xavier over them. The points per game and their just the fact that I think they're going to be the ones that set the energy for this game versus Iowa State, who want to slow it down more. I think Xavier's not going to let that happen. I think they're going to be running, and they're just going to own Iowa State in the second round matchup. Then we have Texas versus Penn State. Now, this is the close one. This is the closest I think there's going to be any game to an upset in the round of 32. But Texas is so good, and they have so many mature basketball players on the floor at all times, where Penn State is good, yes, but they're just not in that tier right now of a Texas, and so I'm going to pick Texas to go on. I genuinely think that Texas is going to face Houston, and that will be the best game of the tournament when they do face off. I can't not see that. Speaking of which, Houston here over the University of Miami. And then I do have Texas over Xavier, even though Xavier is probably red hot at this point in time. Texas is, like, in my mind, bound to go on to have this Texas-Houston State of Texas matchup. It's so hard to pick a winner, especially because it's in Houston, and they've been so dominant lately in recent years. And the user picks say, go Houston, the AP rank says so, the conference rank says so, but the consistency and the general energy that this Texas team brings with each other is what you look for a team that's going to really make noise in March Madness. And I'm genuinely going to pick Texas over Houston here in this matchup. So then we move on to the lower half of our bracket, but the first two teams in our Final Four are Baylor and Texas. So moving on to the East and the West, we have Purdue versus either Texas South or FDU. Again, not going to think too hard about that. It's going to be Purdue. I'm not sure how much I like Purdue as a 1 seed, especially with either Memphis or Florida Atlantic coming out. And I should have just mentioned Memphis. It's going to be Memphis. But Purdue being a 1 seed, especially for that 1 versus 8 Memphis matchup, I don't know how much I trust them. I personally would not be investing a lot in this Purdue team. So, Duke versus Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts has had some fun moments. And of course, they have a 17-game win streak. But it's the Duke Blue Devils. And sometimes you do just need to go with that name value. And especially having no North Carolina Tar Heels in the tournament at all, I guess Duke's going to have to just carry that energy for the rest of the big schools, the big name schools. Next up, Tennessee versus the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. I only like them because I like their name, but Tennessee's going to probably take this one, even though I don't really have them going too far, or at least making that much noise. No bad losses, as the write-up says, but it's just, in comparison to the other teams in March Madness, I don't know how much I like Tennessee, but we're still going to pick them. Next up, Kentucky versus Providence. Gonna go with Kentucky. It's just such a good program, although these are one of our closer matchups when we look at the odds. But still, going Kentucky. Then we have Kansas State versus Montana State. It's the battle of the Cats. If you look at the money lines, plus 300 odds for Montana State. I'm not gonna buy into that. I'm picking Kansas City State. Michigan State versus USC. Again, another one of the 10 seeds I absolutely love to make noise. I just have this feeling that, like, USC will make a run, and they are, like, spoiler alert for the next round, they are my 10 seed that will upset some teams. Especially with a 110 money line, this might end up being my bet picks for Friday the 17th because I like this matchup so much, and I really like USC's chance to win. So I'm going USC. Next up, Marquette versus Vermont. Gonna go Marquette. I don't have a lot of faith in any 14, 15, or 16 seeds. So we're going Marquette. Sorry, Vermont. Now we go to the next round of the bracket. And we're going to have Purdue versus Memphis. And this is honestly a really tough matchup to try to predict. Of course, Zach Edey on Purdue, really dominant. And it's going to be, there is no stopping him for this Memphis team. But they can try. They have the bodies to throw at him. But I really think that when it comes down to it, Purdue's going to take this over Memphis, even though I really like this Memphis roster. And I think if they had any other matchup seed for the next round, I think they could have upset whoever they were trying to play. But this Purdue team, especially with Zach Edey, he's just so dominant. He's going to be so dominant that I'm picking Purdue. Next up, Duke versus Tennessee, and I still have Duke winning. I don't buy in super hard to this Tennessee roster. I don't really buy super hard into Tennessee basketball in the first place. So we're going the Duke Blue Devils here. Next up, we got Kentucky versus Kansas State, and I really think this is a good matchup. I think on the upset potential, it's really up there, but I don't fully see that coming to fruition in this matchup. So we're going Kansas State, but it's a very even matchup. And now here we have maybe what's going to be the most fun game of the tournament, I think. USC versus Marquette. Marquette, overachiever a bit. Projected to finish 9th in the Big East. They won it all. I really think that this run for them is going to crash and burn here against USC. As crazy as that is for USC being the 10th seed, but I think this is going to be that Cinderella story, that underdog team that's going to make a run, and it's going to be USC this year. Now, moving on to the next matchup, we have Purdue versus Duke. This is where Duke goes down. They look good, they look strong, but it's just they don't have that guy. And it's not, I don't know if it's their first season without Coach K, but under a new team, new coach, new culture, I don't see it happening this year, but I definitely could see Duke winning one of the next 3 March Madnesses, if not next year, depending on the players they get. And of course, as Nolan said, shout out Derek Lively. Hopefully he has a monster game, but I'm going Purdue. Next up, Kansas State versus USC, and I can't say I'm the most confident in Kansas State, in all honesty. I don't know how far I see USC going. I don't know if they beat Purdue in that next matchup, but I could really see them going over Kansas State here. And so I'm gonna pick them to go on, face Purdue, and eventually lose to Purdue. But I really think USC is going to have a magical run this year, and I'm going to try to make money by betting on their run. So we'll see. We'll see how it happens. Now we have the last quadrant of the West, and we have some really heavy-hitting teams here, but definitely some teams that can make noise. So we're going to go into it. We have Kansas versus Howard. Going to go Kansas. I don't trust any 16 seed. Of course, there's only been one to win, so I'm not going to think too hard about it. Arkansas versus Illinois is a very good matchup. Arkansas is the favorite to win for Moneyline, but user picks have Illinois winning more. Arkansas really did not do good against top 25 teams this year, and in their conference, they were lower than Illinois, and both these teams are not people that play in a very tough conference. Of course, the SEC is tough, but the Big Ten is tough as well, but it's for their own conferences, Big Ten versus SEC, I would rather the 5 seed in the Big Ten. And for this matchup, I'd rather go Illinois at that plus 100 to money line. Next up, we have St. Mary's versus VCU. It's not a 12 seed I really trust. It's a AP ranked St. Mary's team that came first in their conference. And they've been here before a few times. I'm not sure if they've ever been as low as a 5 seed before, but now they have that pedigree and they have that reputation now of a winning school. So I see them going over VCU. The Yukon Huskies versus Iona. I can't pick or trust any 13, 14, 15, or 16 seeds, and Iona goes right in that. Especially with the money line being negative 450 for Connecticut, it's really hard to think Iona can make noise here. So we're going con. TCU versus ASU or Nevada. Not knowing the team, I'm just going to go TCU for this next matchup. Either way, I think TCU will win. I do think that the Sun Devils will beat Nevada, but lose to TCU. Now we have Gonzaga versus Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon doesn't even have a write-up. And the odds are minus 2,000 for Gonzaga to win. We're not going to think too hard about this, guys. Northwestern versus Boise State. This is the 10 seed I have the least amount of faith in. Even though their money line's plus 105, it's almost a negative money line. There's a good chance they do win, but this is the 110 seed I don't particularly like. So we're going Northwestern. And then the 15 versus 2, UCLA versus NC Asheville. an incredible stretch, going 18-1. Conference ranked 16-2, their first time ever being here. I'm sorry. So now we have Kansas versus Illinois. Illinois, I do like a lot. I like what they brought. Last year, I think either last year or 2 years ago, they upset some team. I can't exactly remember which team it was, but I really do like them. They have a very solid defense, but the 1-seed Kansas Jayhawks are just like really good. And after coming off their regular season title, it's hard not to see them making a run and eventually seeing the like Purdue's and the other teams like that. So going Kansas. This will be a really good matchup, but it's too recent for St. Mary's. So gonna go Connecticut. They've been here before, and they're a very proven program. And they were ranked number 1 in the country to start the year. But it's just I trust UConn a lot more than I trust St. Mary's. Gonzaga versus TCU. Now, I really like this Gonzaga team. Part of me wants to pick TCU just so I have an upset because part of my brain's like, oh, we don't have enough upsets yet. But this Gonzaga team is so solid, and I really think that where they're positioned in this bracket, they can make a really impressive run. So we're going Gonzaga. Northwestern versus UCLA. I want to pick Northwestern again because it's like I can't really like it's crazy to think that this many high seeds would actually advance on, but it's just like they're really good this year, and especially having a 29-5 season and 18-2 conference record in a good conference, Pac-12. It's definitely not the topmost conference, but the Pac-12 is definitely a dangerous conference, and being 18-2 in that, it really sets them up to be a top team in this tournament. Maybe not better than Gonzaga, though. Now, Kansas versus UConn. Hard to pick UConn here. I want to, and they have the bodies, but it's just they don't have that consistency. I'm hoping that a lot of the members of this UConn roster come back for another season because I genuinely think they could be one of the top teams in next year's March Madness. But they're not at that point yet. Once they get some more seniors, like once some more juniors keep going up, and not sure if freshman Donovan Clingan will come back, but if he does come back, then expect UConn to make a really deep run in the 2024 March Madness bracket. But for now, I'm going to Kansas. Now, another one of these games where I think it's going to be one of the better games of the tournament, just in general, just period. Gonzaga versus UCLA. And again, I think just Gonzaga doesn't have that hard of a road to this point, facing Grand Canyon before this. It's so hard facing Grand Canyon and then facing TCU. It's hard not to see Gonzaga going on to face Kansas in the next matchup. And then we have Kansas versus Gonzaga, both really good. Both number 1 in their conferences. AP ranked 4 for Kansas versus 9 is genuinely one of the closer matchups that I think I've put together so far. And Kansas, of course, coming off winning last year, beating North Carolina, losing a lot of guys, but they do still have a ton of talent. I just think that Gonzaga's going to have the momentum required to maybe pull the upset. So now on to our Final Four, which is Baylor and Purdue and Texas and Gonzaga. A 1, 3, 2, and a 3 seed. I just can't see it this year. I've seen a couple people have Creighton and other teams like Xavier, well, even then they're 3. But I've seen Creighton a few times get put in this Final Four as a 6 seed, and I've seen Memphis in a few people's brackets too, and it's just, I think these 4 teams are the 4 best teams in college basketball right now. And so we're going to hop into the first matchup of Baylor versus Purdue, which will be really good. I don't see Purdue actually doing it with Zach Edey. I just don't see them having the depth and enough talent to really put themselves over Baylor, especially with how young their team is. Right here it says that their backcourt is inexperienced, both being freshmen. So I see that Baylor's experience and Baylor's pedigree really carrying them over this point and putting them into the championship game. And now this is the toughest matchup. that I've had so far, and it's one that I've had to think about a lot before. And a few other brackets, I had this matchup. Just reading about it and just looking at the stats as they are. Conference rank, of course, Gonzaga is not in as good of a division, or conference, sorry. So they're, of course, going to be better. Wow, it's such a close matchup. The points per game for Gonzaga is so ridiculous. And trying to think that they could bring that all the way to the Final Four and maybe even into the championship game is crazy to think. And this Texas team is filled with players who have been there years. And even though they were a little inconsistent throughout the regular season, I think in March Madness, because of their experience and because of the culture around Texas, and with like how old a lot of their players are, it feels like a lot of their players have been there 9 years now. I'm gonna go Texas over Gonzaga to set up a Baylor versus Texas final, a 3 versus 2. And this is a really good matchup again, but I got Texas going over and winning March Madness. It's just they're so consistent and their good players have all been there years. And it's hard to pick against a combination of talent and experience. And I think that's what Texas brings more than any other team coming into this bracket, coming into this tournament. And for my final score, I think it's going to be more of a dogfight. I don't think it's going to be that high scoring. I think the winning team is going to have 68 points, and Baylor's going to come out and score 62. It's going to be a 6-point win, little free throws at the end of the game, maybe a bit boring, but I genuinely think Texas is going to take it all, and it's going to be a 68-62 game over Baylor. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Good luck in your brackets, and we will see you with the podcast sometime soon. Thank you, everyone.